I'm Cantor Smolash. This is User's Guide to the Soul, and this is a section about reflecting infinite love. Reflecting infinite love. It's a very inspiring section that's going to be the next 4 chapters, and that not only will teach us a profound meditation to, no matter what our level, no matter what kind of day I'm having today, to be able to channel into the infinite love of the universe, and in fact, awaken that in my own heart. But also, it's going to give us many tools over the next few months, if you're joining us, of how to take that love and infuse your prayers, your services with that beautiful light, that infinite light. And we're going through technically the Shema and its blessings. So this is not some arcane prayer that you'll have to, wait for a certain time of the year. This is the prayer we say every day here at Temple Israel Friday nights. So we want to take this knowledge, this kabbalistic wisdom, and infuse it into our prayers, our services, so that we elevate everything that happens, right? Everything that happens, the people around you, your heart, your family. We're in chapter 46 of the Tanya. Chapter 46 of the Tanya. So if you would like the text, please email maya@temple-israel.org. The general section we're in right now is looking at what's called kavanah. Kavanah. And I know we've heard the word kavanah come to mean just general intention. What's your kavanah? Oh, I intend to give some charity. That's what I had in mind. That's my kavanah. In Kabbalah, in mysticism, kavanah has a much more specific meaning. And here we're using kavanah to refer to both the love and the reverence with which I infuse any Jewish activity. So anything I do, if I'm teaching Aleph Bais to my kids, if I'm blessing the challah at home, if I'm lighting candles, I can do it just chick-chock. I can just do it because time came and I do it. Or I can stop, I can focus, I can bring my mind and heart into alignment, and I can just feel profound feelings. And there's no end to the depth of how I can feel. Those feelings of both love and reverence, those are the soul of that mitzvah. That's the kavanah of that mitzvah. And we went through many chapters of different types of love and different types of awe. And here we've come to a specific type of love that is unique in that it's not just accessible to me, even if I'm not a big Torah scholar, I don't spend 10 hours a day meditating, or I'm not a spiritual giant. I'm just a regular person, regular Jewish guy or girl or whoever. And no matter what my level, this is not just accessible to me. In fact, as we'll learn, the lower my level, so to speak, the more powerful this meditation is. The lower my level, the more powerful this meditation. So this is an open door for everyone, every single person, no matter what your day has been, your year's been, your situation, your state of mind, your state of heart. This meditation will allow you to awaken fiery love of God with which to infuse all your prayers and, in fact, everything you do. So we start at the beginning of the chapter looking at, we described that there's another straightforward way equally available to every single person, no matter the level, right? And then we even brought in the text of the Shema. We got anyone arriving here? I think we're all here in class. Thanks. That no matter what, you'll be able to say the Shema and surrender your heart and your soul and all your being, all your possessions, everything about you. It's based on this human law, this natural response, which is, if someone looks at me and is loving and smiling and appreciates me, somewhere in my heart, maybe I won't notice it because I'm not so attuned to my heart, but somewhere in my heart, something automatically will awaken, that my heart will create a love that responds to that love they're showing me. Somewhere deep in my heart, and I may, through my free will, suppress it. I may say, you know what? This could be a romantic thing and it's not appropriate, so I'm going to suppress it. Or I'm a young person, this person doesn't look like a right partner for me, so I'm going to suppress it. But even if I hold back for whatever good reason, there's a natural response in my heart that when someone loves me, I love them back. The text the Alter Rebbe uses, our teacher, the Alter Rebbe, is as water reflects itself, as a face reflects itself in water, so does one heart reflect another heart. As a face, if I'm looking in water and I see my face, or I'm seeing my own face on this Zoom screen, so you're all seeing your faces. If the face on the Zoom screen is smiling, what does it mean about your face? It's smiling. And although there can be technical glitches here, it's not like water. Pretty much it's automatic. If I smile, my Zoom face smiles back, and there's no delay, there's no struggle, it's just natural. Same thing with our heart. If someone expresses love to us, somewhere in my heart that reflects back, and even if I'm not aware the person is expressing it, because I'm not aware of every part of my soul and every part of how my soul is connected to every other Jewish being and every other living being. So somewhere at that subtle level of my soul, when they love me, I love them back, even if I'm not aware. It applies no matter what. That's the rule we're leveraging to learn to meditate and create a fiery love for the infinite, for the Ein Sof within us. And then the way we do it is the Alter Rebbe told us a story. If you're with us last week, you've heard this. Imagine there's a lowly, out of luck, disregarded by society person who has no money, no friends, no hope, no regular supply of food, no shelter, and they're living literally on a garbage dump, if you can imagine. So in terms of where you'd want to be stationed in society, what we call the very bottom, right? This person has no status. They are outcast practically. And then imagine there's not just a king, but a great king, a king that is not just ruling over many, many, many lands, but actually intrinsically great. The Alter Rebbe uses both words, right? Gadol v'rav, if I'm right. So this is a king that everyone loves and respects just because they're a wise, or it could be a queen too, it doesn't matter, a wise and loving person with internal greatness. They also are powerful and rule over many, many lands. And imagine this king doesn't just summon this peasant, doesn't just call them and pay some attention to them, but actually leaves their castle, brings their whole retinue of ministers and guards and armed whatevers, marches right up in their carriage, rolls up in their carriage to the garbage dump, gets out of their carriage, walks right over to the stinky, smelly garbage dump where this peasant is living, and reaches out their hand and pulls them out of the garbage dump, brings them into the carriage, brings them back to the castle, and not just cleans them up and befriends them, but actually brings them through room after room until finally there's a door where not even a servant is allowed to enter to clean. It's the most private door of this ruler. And they go together through that door and they sit and they embrace and they share stories and they're kissing and hugging like the closest of friends. Imagine how that peasant would feel, right? That not just their equal and not just their superior, but the most superior person you could think of in society took them and embraced them to that extent. And then imagine how their heart would flow with love. No matter how hard their heart had become, it would melt and a great, great love would flow out towards this king. And then he says, if that's the most you can imagine in human society, and you can only imagine the abundant love that would just flow no matter what, that is nothing compared to our relationship with the Ein Sof. And with that, we're going to pick up our text. We're on page 703 in the Tanya. Before we go in, anyone in class, let me know any questions on our review so far. I think most of us were here last week. Good. Here we go. So we're at 703 at the bottom, v'hine, the middle chunk. V'hine kechol hadvarim ha'ele u'chechol hachizayon hazeh v'gadol yater me'od b'chiflaim le'in ketz asat lanu Elokeinu.
In a matter corresponding in every detail to the said figure and image of the love shown by the mighty king to the most lowly individual, but to a much greater degree, doubled and redoubled, infinitely more than in the parable, has our God dealt with us, for his greatness is beyond comprehension.
Right. So if this story here, I've got you guys, if you're on Facebook, thanks. Hello, Brian. Wonderful to see people joining us. If you want to ask questions on Facebook, please just add the comments here and I will keep up with you guys. My thumbs have some trouble typing here. So, oh, great. Yeah, we got 7 people on Facebook. So welcome to User's Guide for the Soul. Hi, Fran. Hi, Hi, Ibiba. And Happy New Year back to you. Please let me know any questions. We're following you on Facebook too. So if this meditation, right, or this contemplation that we're using, Imagine if I were this peasant and a king or queen came in and pulled me out of my garbage heap. If that fills my heart with love, now the Alter Rebbe says, you can't even compare the difference between a peasant and this ruler to us and the Ein Sof. Why? Because first of all, no matter how big a difference there is in society, a peasant and a king are still both human beings. They still have some point of reference, right? There's still some comparison between them. Whereas with us and the Ein Sof, you're talking about a limited created being, an absolute infinite, the only existing being. So there is no comparison of the mashal that the Alter Rebbe tried to tell us, the story the Alter Rebbe is using in this meditation, and our actual relationship with God. If we could just grasp how great that difference was, again, we'd have an even more powerful feeling of love as we ponder this meditation. Ki ligdulato ein cheker. Go ahead, Sue Ellen.
I think for his greatness is beyond comprehension.
Right. I can understand. You go ahead. Yeah.
And he pervades all worlds and encompasses, transcends all worlds.
Very good. Vihu mimale kol amin v'savev kol amin. So I can understand the greatness of a ruler. I can say they rule over 40 lands or 400 lands. I can understand they have an IQ that is 40 above me. I can understand they're, very charismatic and everyone in the land. I can actually make categories. And although they're way, way beyond me, I can grasp it. I can get the difference between me and them. With the Ein Sof, we can't even comprehend how much greater than us God is. There's no way for us to even get at the difference between us, let alone their essence. And here God fills all worlds and transcends all worlds. So anything you can imagine in the physical or spiritual world, God is filling that. That is within God. As well, God's light is surrounding that, not even able to relate to it, and the worlds don't exist. V'noda mizohar kadosh harizal zichrein livracha ribui hahechalot v'haolamot ad ein mispar v'chol olam v'hechal ribo rivavot malachim le'ein ketz v'tachlit.
And from the Holy Zohar, as also from our master, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria of blessed memory, it is known of the multitude of the halichot, these being the specific levels within each spiritual world, and worlds which are infinite, and of the myriads of angels found in each world, and halichot, countless and without end.
So if you like Kabbalah, if you like all these descriptions of the spiritual worlds and what's happening there, and by the way, Dan, let's go back to you and do you next. I think I had you next in the order, so you'll read next. Here the Alter Rebbe is getting into, if a king has territories and subjects, well then what does the Ein Sof have? The Ein Sof has what's called hechalot, chambers. These are spiritual levels, call them, specific zones in the spiritual world that have nothing to do with a physical place. And also endless angels that are found within those hechalot without end. So a king, I could say, oh, you rule over this country, it has 300 million inhabitants, it has this many square miles. Wow, impressive. Me, I rule over my 4 feet of a garbage dump. So you're, way beyond me. And imagine you're paying attention to me. That makes me feel so great, right? But now try and look at what it is that the Ein Sof is ruling over, so to speak, as a ruler. It is absolutely infinite chambers and absolutely infinite angels, which are so much higher than human beings in terms of their appreciation of spirituality, their ability to love the Ein Sof. So there's no way for us to even make a frame of reference to understand how much greater the Ein Sof is, that is still paying attention to us and loving us, as you'll see. And back to Dan, Uchmosh Katuv B'Gemara, Ktiv Hayesh Mispar Ligdudav, Uchtiv Elef Alfim Yesham Shunei V'Ribo Revivan Kadamohi Chulu.
So does the Gemara note, it is written, is there any numbering his regiments of angels? Yet it is also written, 1,000 thousands minister unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stand before him.
Yeah, welcome Doug, Neil, Les, Jeff, Kathy on Facebook. Please, like I said, leave us comments. We love including you in the conversation. The Alter Rebbe now is going to pause to point out a contradiction. Often he likes to, when he's discussing something, he finds something that is, you got a stira, a contradiction in the texts that he's looking at, and he'll find a beautiful resolution. So here's one. He says, well, hold on a minute. In the Gemara, it says, can you number God's regiments, right? God's divisions of angels. So how many subjects does God have? The Gemara says infinite. You just no end. However many you can imagine, just keep going. There's no end to it. So you can't compare it to a king with a finite amount of subjects, no matter how big. Yet, here's the contradiction. It's written 1,000 thousands minister to God and 10,000 times 10,000 stand before him, right? So 1,000 thousands is a million. I know what a million is. That's a number. And 10,000 times 10,000 is, right? Is that a billion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. So 1 with 6, 7, 8. That's 100 million, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? But 10,000 times 10,000 is a number too. I don't care how big it is. I can write it down, and there's many more numbers that are big, infinite numbers or transfinite numbers that are bigger than it, right? So what's the truth here? Are there just infinite ministers, infinite regiments, or is there a finite number? And so the Alter Rebbe resolves very quickly, U mishane elef alfin v'chulu mispar gedud echad aval gedudav ein mispar. I think we're at...
Right, yep. The Gemara answers 1,000 thousands is the quota of one regiment, but his regiments are innumerable. The second verse then speaks of the number of angels within one regiment, while the first verse alludes to the number of regiments, which is truly infinite.
And so here the Alter Rebbe says, no, 1,000 thousands. So a million is how many, the quota, that make up one division of God's angels, so to speak. But then the second verse speaks of how many regiments, or the first verse speaks of how many regiments there are. So the Alter Rebbe says, yes, it is infinite because you get a million minimum in a regiment, but there's infinite regiments. So the take home is, whatever we feel from the story we're looking at in our meditation, no ruler that we could put in that story even comes close to the reality of what's happening with our relationship with Hashem. Sorry, I lost you. There you are again. And then we get to the next point, which is ratcheting up our internal emotional response to this meditation even more, that despite all these infinite chambers we're describing and all these infinite angels we're describing that the Ein Sof rules over, so to speak, that should make us feel incredible love that is reflected from the love that the Ein Sof is showering on us. Still, as impressive as all that is, none of it even exists before the light of the Ein Sof, right? I've jumped up above the idea of a limited physical ruler that rules over physical lands and physical subjects. Now I have spiritual chambers and angels and infinite chambers and angels. And yet, as impressive as that is, none of that even exists compared to the Ein Sof. I shouldn't be impressed by the infinite lands and subjects that the Ein Sof rules over, because to the Ein Sof, none of it is even there. And that, again, will propel me to an even greater height of love to reflect in our meditation. V'chulam kamei klam mamash, chashivei uvetelim, bimtziut mamash, kvitul dibur echad mamash, לגבי מהות הנפש המדברת ועצמותה, בעוד שהיה דיבורה עדיין במחשבתה או ברצון וחמדת הלב, כנזכר לעיל באריכות.
Yet before him, all of them are accounted as nothing at all and are nullified in their very existence, just as one word is truly nullified in relation to the essence and being of the articulate soul, the soul possessing the power of speech. While the speech of the soul was still present in the soul's faculty of thought, or in the will and desire of the heart, as been explained above at length.
So if you've been with us for the several years while we're learning this text, as soon as he makes this, as soon as he makes his reference to the idea of how nullified one word is compared to the power of speech, etc., in my soul. If you're like me, your mind goes back to the weeks and weeks and weeks we spent delving into that idea and the depth of that idea. And I have such a joy. I don't know if you're having that response with me. I have such a joy and also a bit of a trepidation that we don't get too into it, right? Because we spent I think several weeks just exploring this point of how nullified one word is compared to the faculties of my soul, and that the whole world and all the spiritual worlds are even more nullified than that in front of the essence of God, in front of just one word coming from Malchut of Atzilus. So we can't go into it to the extent, but that's what the Alter Rebbe is bringing us to, is that all these worlds that we should be so impressed with, that God is showing love to me and it's going to reflect in my heart, not only do they not exist, not only are they irrelevant, they are, excuse me, as irrelevant. The best way I can describe their relevance is how nullified a word I'm going to say tomorrow is right now in my faculty of intellect. Right? So tomorrow, something will occur to me that I'll have an emotion, and then it'll cause me to think about it in my physical brain. Those letters will go down to letters of speech. Finally, it'll come out. My power of speech, which could say anything, will pick one minute infinitesimal piece to express, right? One little word, and it'll say right, or whatever it'll be. How nullified is that word that I'm going to say tomorrow once it telescoped into my power of speech, into my power of physical thought, into my emotional capacity, into my intellectual capacity, and it's now buried in my hidden intellectual capacity right now? Does it have any existence? You'd say no. At that point, it's just me. It's just Michael, and Michael could say anything tomorrow, and that word does not really exist. It's just Michael right now. That's the best way the Alter Rebbe can describe how little all these worlds and angels exist compared to one word of God, that God says, let there be light, or let there be a world. So if text me or email me, and I'll find, interesting. Okay, we have a question here. Let's look at this from Ibiba. In a class system, is it proper to keep a relationship with someone from a higher class which is not acceptable in the society? That's an interesting question. And I don't know quite how to answer that, because I'm not in a class system. In America, we don't really understand that. So I can't refer to that. But I'd say, Ibiba, in this mashal, in this metaphor, I think the point is exactly that it's, even though it wasn't acceptable in traditional societies for a king to come and pull someone out of a garbage heap, that would make the peasant feel even more love for them, because they overcame the norms of society. They overcame the people that would say a king shouldn't do that, right? They didn't care. They loved them so much that they just disregarded all that, disregarded their own honor, so to speak, and came down to the garbage heap and pulled them out. So for our purposes, now the peasant's going to feel even more love. I hope that answers your question. Let me know. So all these worlds don't exist to the extent that one word I'm going to say tomorrow exists within me. And now I see that this can't even compare to the mashal of a physical ruler. This is something entirely different. And even though they don't exist, וכולם שואלים, איה מקום כבודו ועונים מלוא כל הארץ כבודו הם ישראל עמו. This track, I think, Cindy, have you read?
Yes, me.
Oh, Linda, go ahead.
For the Holy One, blessed be he, forsook the higher and lower creatures that are not the ultimate purpose of his creation.
Good, and want to go one above for us too. All these angels ask. You see the paragraph above?
Oh, all these angels ask, where is the place of his glory? And they answer, the whole physical earth is full of his glory. That is, how is this world full of his glory? Because of his people, Israel.
So what do these angels do? They're exploding with love and awe and reverence for the Ein Sof. And they're just asking, where is God's essence? Where is God's real glory? It's not here. We know it's not here. We know we don't even exist, but we have such love and reverence, and they're calling and calling, where is God's glory? Where the whole earth is full of God's glory. Now, isn't that funny? You'd think naturally we look to the spiritual to see God's light. We look to emotions and intellect and beyond that into the transcendent to find God's glory. And the angels that can see it much more clearly, they say, no, where is it? It's down here on earth. And why? Because you're here and I'm here. Because you're here and I'm here in a physical body with our errors and our mistakes and our narishkeit, and with all the physical stuff around us to get attached to or to use for good things, with this crazy free will. It's only down here where we're stumbling around in the blindness of the physical world, so to speak. That's where God's glory really is. Why? Because just like in our example, this king, this ruler came out of the castle and right down to the garbage heap. That's what's happening now. The Ein Sof is coming right down, paying attention to us and bypassing and ignoring all these angels and spiritual worlds and saying, no, my real intention for making the world, my focus, what I'm interested in, that's the people in the physical world, how they treat each other, what happens at Temple Israel, are they feeling something when they say the Shema? That's where the essence, that's where my heart is, not with all these spiritual worlds. V'lo bachar b'chulam ki im b'Yisrael amo v'hotziam miMitzrayim ervat haaretz mekom hazuhama v'hatumah. Paula, if you'd like to read, we're choosing none, page 706, if you want to unmute. Got us? Oh, we lost you. Let's come back to you, Paula. Rick, why don't you, or Joyce, do you want to read for us?
Oh,
there you are. Choosing. Here, let's go to Rick and Paul. We'll come back for you next time. Okay.
Okay, choosing none of them but Israel, his people, whom he brought out of Egypt, the obscenity of the earth, the place of filth and impurity.
Yeah, and Paula, be ready. We'll read with you next. Yeah. So, this time of the year we're reading about the Exodus. We're reading about the plagues and everything that's going on. It's on our minds. Shabbat Shirah is coming up, the big moments. But we don't think really what was Egypt. It wasn't just a place where we were enslaved and we had to work and life was hard. We think of it also as like it was superpower. There must have been great wealth and great riches. And I mean, it must have been a nice place. But in Kabbalah, Egypt is seen as something entirely different. That peasant sitting on the garbage heap, that was us. That was the people of Israel when we were in Egypt, because spiritually, Egypt was the absolute lowest place in existence, right? Everything that the Ein Sof despised, everything that the Ein Sof said, I know I have to put this in the world so people have free will not to choose it, but I'm going to make it behind my back. I'm not even going to look, from idol worship to cruelty to, a misuse of magic. They said that Egypt was a place of great magical powers, but, used in the wrong way. Everything about Egypt was just like that garbage dump. And what were we doing there? We were there for centuries. And even when the sea was being split and we were walking through, the angels were asking God, why'd you go pick these people? They were just worshiping idols, right? We were so far into the impurities of the world. We ourselves were worshiping idols that we were almost completely lost, right? It said that there's 50 gates of impurity, just like there's 50 gates of holiness. We were at gate 49. So we were about to just completely be almost irretrievably lost to the klipa and to the negative side of reality. So we weren't just there, doing our thing in Egypt, and Egypt was bad. It was all over us, right? We smelled of it. It was, there's no washing it off, in just a moment. And yet, God came right to Egypt. And remember, it wasn't, as he's going to say, it wasn't through a minister. God didn't send us a telegram and say, hey, come into my carriage and meet me. God came with his own essence right to Egypt, right to that place of impurity to take us out. So every aspect of this metaphor, of this mosher that we're learning, is reflected in our entire relationship with Ein Sof, you and me, and our whole historical relationship. Lo al yedei malach v'lo al yedei chulu, ele hakadosh baruch hu b'chvodo v'atzmo yarad l'sham.
Though not an angel, which is a creatured being whose abode is in the world of Maria, Yetzirah, or Asiya, nor through a messenger from the level of the world of Absolute, but the Holy One, blessed be he, himself in his glory, descended there.
Beautiful. So this, I mean, this is the language is incredible, and we remember, you know, from the Seder how in the Haggadah how it describes that God Himself came, right? God Himself came, not an angel, not anyone else. God's essence came. And Ibib, I see your question about why are Jews differentiated. If you can message me after, that's a little off topic, but happy to discuss it with you. I don't want to diverge from the text right now on that question, but thank you. כמו שכתוב, "וארד להצילו וגומר." And let's go to Sue Ellen.
As it is written, and I have descended to save him from the hand of the Egyptians.
כדי לקרבם אליו בקירוב וייחוד אמיתי בהתקשרות הנפש ממש. Go ahead, Dan.
In order to bring them near to him in true closeness and unity with a real attachment of soul, so that the Jew's soul will be truly bound up with the Almighty.
And now we get to, if that was the historical scope, if that was understanding that our role when God came to Egypt to pull us out, to bring us to Sinai and share all this, you know, God's essence with us in the giving of the Torah, that's our historical role. Now we get to our personal relationship with God, and really an intimate relationship like between a married couple, with kisses and hugs and complete union and attachment. בבחינת נשיקין פה לפה לדבר דבר השם זו הלכה.
On the level of kisses of mouth to mouth, so that the Jew's mouth be united with the mouth and speech of God by uttering the word of God, namely the halacha.
So that might be a big leap, and we've looked at that we looked at the idea of there's two things that block the light that is coming through, the light that's coming through from God. One is that it can be veiled, right? Like the picture behind me, and there's a sun and there's trees in front of it and they veil it all, so I don't get the full sunlight, right? Also, it can be hidden. In other words, there can be either something that's transparent, I can see through it, or that can be sorry, that's the same thing. So the veil is that it can be blocked, or it can be large or small in terms of how much light comes through. So the idea we used was, if I'm looking through a small peephole in a door, I can see right through, it's transparent. There's nothing blocking it, and I know it's a sunny day, but how much light is coming through the peephole? Not much. It's very contracted. And for that, I need to expand the window until if I get a big, beautiful window, now lots of light is coming through. But either way, I can see right through, and I can see that it's a gorgeous day. Mitzvahs, even though they are contracted, and the amount of light that gets through is so tiny because it's physical stuff, right? I'm shaking a lulav, I'm spinning a gragger. It's the physical world, and yet, yes, like a camera's aperture, exactly, Gemma. Very nice, very nice. And yet, when we do a mitzvah, because that's exactly what God wants, it's completely nullified to God's will. That is entirely transparent. What we call hester panim, the hiding of God's face, the hiding of God's inside essence. There's nothing in between. And even though I'm looking at a gragger or a Megillah Esther, it looks like a physical piece of the world because it's contracted. But in fact, when I look at it, I see right through to God's essence, like looking through the teensiest little aperture of a camera, as Gemma said, but I'm seeing the subject. I'm seeing it clearly, even though almost no light comes through. What does that mean? When we talk about mitzvahs, when we learn, just people sitting and learning Gemara, learning about arguments around law, we are actually touching, our lips are touching the essence of God. And that's what a kiss is. The kiss is God's speech touching our lips. And when our mouth says those words of Torah or halakha, the Alter Rebbe is saying that's exactly like a kiss between a married couple, or the kisses between this ruler and this new friend as they're embracing in this private chamber. And you can, with this meditation, get to a point where that really is the frame with which you see learning Torah and how beautiful that is. That when I sit down to learn Torah, I'm not just enriching myself or enjoying the study or becoming more connected to Judaism. I'm actually meeting the Ein Sof, the essence of the universe, and we're kissing. And we're kissing like a married couple. So just such a beautiful frame to see the learning of Torah. And now my relationship is so personal. But kissing is what? Kissing is a physical experience of an even deeper love. So how does that even deeper love express that total oneness? V'tabkut rucha berucha hi hasagat haTorah v'diyat ritzono v'chochmato.
In the fusion of spirit of man with spirit of God, namely the comprehension of the Torah and the knowledge of his will and wisdom.
And by the way, hi Gary and Wilma, if you're with us on Facebook, please feel free to ask any questions or comments. I'll try to bring it into class. Yes, speaking words of Torah now is like kissing God in our meditation. Okay, maybe I got that. But I kiss someone because there's an inside closeness that I want to express. I'm just expressing something even more profound. What is that? When I learn Torah, I can just be going through by rote, or I can be absorbing it intellectually. I can have some idea, even here now, when we're learning this idea that love reflects love, and that this mashal of how a peasant would feel, that corresponds in every detail to Yetziat Mitzrayim, coming out of Egypt. As I'm understanding it, something's going inside of me, and I'm uniting with something. And the Alter Rebbe described that. Our ability to understand the level of chokhmah of the Ein Sof, the level of the first spark of insight of the Ein Sof in the higher spiritual worlds, that's a union that's like no other union that exists in reality. And that's the inner union that we experience with the Ein Sof as we are kissing them, so to speak, in our learning Torah and as we understand it, not just as we say it. Does that make sense? I'm not sure I expressed that as eloquently as I could. Is there any questions or thoughts on that? Or on Facebook? And we'll go on. Dechula chad mamash v'gam b'chinat chibuk. Go ahead, Linda. Let's do the bottom of the page.
Which are truly one. God's will and wisdom are truly one with him. Hence, through Torah study, Jews become united with God in a manner of union, spirit, and also with a form of embrace, for Torah and mitzvot also affect the unity of an embrace, similar to a person embracing his friend with his body and arms.
And so the third piece, I've got the kisses, I've got the union of total oneness, and now if we want to complete this image, we have the hug, and that is, the mitzvahs are described as the organs of the Ein Sof. If the Ein Sof has an abstract conceptual body, which the Ein Sof doesn't, right? We don't picture that. But if you're going full into the abstract, we say the mitzvahs are like a body, and we'll even see they have a right arm and a left arm. But when I do a mitzvah, that's when, as we discussed at Sukkot, God is hugging me. So I've got the kiss of speaking words of Torah, I've got the union of understanding Torah, and then I've got the hug of doing a mitzvah. So we're getting closer and closer to describing now this relationship, not as a friendship between two non-equals in society, a ruler and a peasant, but now as the union of a married couple. And, clearly the Alter Rebbe does not look at same-sex couples, and so this is a little bracket that is not Tanya, but at Temple Israel, married couples includes all married couples, and we've got lots of same-sex families and couples in our community. So everything I'm saying, I hope that we will apply to every family at Temple Israel, and close that bracket, because that's our Reform view. That's not, of course, the Alter Rebbe's view, to be clear. But as we're talking about a marriage, it's interesting. The Haggadah describes how God came down to Egypt himself or herself or itself, whatever word you want to use, to bring us out, not through an angel, not through a minister. And you say, well, why is that? Well, because it was like a marriage. So look at a marriage. Even in even in legal Judaism, halakhic Judaism, there actually is a halakhically viable option. It's legally viable for someone to marry someone through a messenger, through a representative, right? So there would be no problem if someone were to say, you know, okay, I can't be there myself, but, you know, please be my representative, put this ring on this person, you know, say all the right things, and then we'll be married halakhically by Jewish law. It's fine, it works, and we're now a loving married couple. Has anyone ever seen that happen? Has anyone ever seen a wedding where the bride or the groom or either of them said, you know what, it's a bad day for me, this works halakhically, so my representative is going to come put the ring on, right? And why is that? Because intellectually it may work, but emotionally we recognize there's no place they'd ever be anywhere other than at their own marriage. That's where their whole heart is.
Wasn't this the case between the Ein Sof and Moshe?
Tell me about that. I'm not following.
Well, you said Moshe didn't want to do it. Your God talked him into it.
You're talking about going to Pharaoh and saying, let my people go. And Moshe said, you know, I have a lisp and impediment.
Right, I don't want to do it.
So that was the marriage we're talking about happens at Sinai, right? And where was Moshe at Sinai?
He's up on top of the mountain.
On top of the mountain, closest to God, right? So the marriage we're talking about is Sinai. This was God, you know, giving Moshe a mission. This was war, so to speak. You know, Moshe had to go, and Moshe knew the nature of the Jewish people and how stubborn we are and how much trouble we're going to give him. Moshe knew very well Pharaoh and what's going to happen. Moshe could see that nothing's going to convince Pharaoh. You know, Moshe knew his own weaknesses and recognized that because he was the most humble person. So I think you're mixing metaphors. So the burning bush and the conversation there, I wouldn't call that God's marriage to the Jewish people. It's a good point you're making. But at the marriage, which was Sinai, there Moshe would never have been anywhere else. Moshe would never say, oh, send someone else up the mountain. You know what? Today I want to go, do my hair or something, right? So same thing here. In our mashal, why did God come into Egypt, God's self and not through an angel? Not because God wanted to press anybody, not for any intellectual reason, but because this was the proposal. This was God bringing us out of Mitzrayim. There was nowhere else in the cosmos, in any spiritual world, where God would rather be, because the Jewish people are so dear to God. And back to our meditation, the fact that the Ein Sof would show any attention to any people, let alone the Jewish people, as they were in Egypt, worshiping idols and covered in impurities, that should now fill us again with such a reflected love that everything we do is filled with kavanah and with emotion. And let's wrap up. We have just time to wrap up this idea of the hug in our metaphor, and it becomes very detailed with a right arm or left arm, as you'll see. De ramach pikudin hen ramach evarin de malka kaniskar leel. And I think we're at, yes, Sue Ellen, why don't you go ahead? Am I right?
I'm sorry, are we at the top of 708?
For the 248. Oh, yeah, from the top, you're right.
Namely, the fulfillment of the positive precepts of the 248 organs which the human being possesses. Performance of the 248 positive commandments brings about a state of embrace within God's 248 organs, embraces man.
For the 248 ordinances are the 248 ordinances of the king, as mentioned earlier. So we have this very abstract, of course, concept of a body of the Ein Sof, which doesn't have a body. But when we're talking mitzvahs and love, we can kind of use the language if we like. V'derech klal nechlakin l'shalosh b'chinot yamin u'smol ve'etzma she'en chesedin rachamim. Go ahead, Dan.
For the 248 ordinances are the 248 organs of the king, as mentioned earlier in chapter 23.
And one more in a general manner.
In a general manner, these 248 positive mitzvot are divided into three categories: right, left, and center, namely chesed, kindness, din, stern justice, and rachamim, mercy.
So I don't want to now go back into the Kabbalah behind it, but if you're aware of the three emotional flows that make up the first three of the emotional set of Sfirot. That is Chesed on the right, Gvura on the left, and Tiferet or Rachamim in the middle. And that makes up the three categories of mitzvahs that we have. Some mitzvahs have to do with Chesed, love another like yourself, or don't do them. Well, okay, let's not debate that. But mitzvahs that involve giving, those are the right. Mitzvahs that involve, do not murder. That obviously would be the left. That would be Gevura. And then there's mitzvahs of compassion, perhaps tzedakah. I don't know. I'm not bucky on exactly which go where. Maybe that's chesed. But mitzvahs that involve tiferet or compassion, those make up the torso. So when we're looking at the mitzvahs as this image of a body that is hugging us, there we have the chesed mitzvahs that are the right arm, the gevura mitzvahs that are the left arm, and the tiferet mitzvahs that are the torso. And that is the arms and the torso that are embracing us as we have these kisses with the Ein Sof of our mouth, reciting words of Torah, a complete union like a married couple of us understanding those words and them entering into us with a unity. And then finally, the hug of the physical mitzvahs that we do, which can go around with us really all day long. There's a mitzvah to do at every moment of the waking day, so we can have that hug all day long. So that concludes the section of how we take this metaphor of a ruler that takes a peasant out of a garbage heap and brings them to the palace, to their innermost chamber, and befriends them. How much love that will create, and then we try to propel that even higher to say that's nothing compared to how the Ein Sof compares to us, and then look at every detail of the story and how it played out. Every detail of the story. We were in Egypt, which was the garbage heap. We were outcast. We had no friends. We had no hope. Then God's self came, not an angel, but God's essence came right to Egypt, pulled us out, and then brought us to Sinai, where there was this wedding, so to speak, and God shared with us in this private chamber in the desert, right, where no one else had access to. God shared the Torah that would be these kisses every time we spoke it, right? Wake up in the morning and say the Shema, and there's a kiss there if you're saying words of Torah anytime. Understanding, which is this total union like a married couple would have, and then hugs of the mitzvahs. And so that's the affection that the Ein Sof is sharing with us, just like this ruler shared with his peasant. So much so, as we'll see next week, that it rises to the level of the unity between a married couple, which can be described as the greatest unity that exists in the physical world. But we'll get to that next week. So we'll take a few minutes to finish with our meditation and take this concept and apply it, place it into our meditative structure so that it starts to create emotions within us. But before we do, any questions from anyone here, or who's this, Gemma? Oh, I can't hear you. Who's that? I have to introduce his dog. My gosh.
He's called Woody.
Hi, Woody. Hi, Woody. How are you? My gosh.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Woody's a gentleman or a female?
He's a boy, yeah. He has a sister, Jessie.
Very sweet. I'm glad. I'm glad he joined us. He's a sweetie. So now we're gonna take this contemplative material, this divine concept, and insert it into our meditative structure, which we call, if you've been with us, the long short path. So a little shift, if you find yourself in a comfortable position. Jewish meditation, you don't need complex positions or complex breathing patterns. It really is much simpler for many reasons. And if you'll let your breath slow down as well. I get very excited learning this text. It's fun and it's engaging, but now we want to take the energy and let it settle like just a calm surface of a lake with no wind whatsoever, just purely flat as glass surface. Let the breath flow in and out. As your breath flows evenly, the movements of your soul also flow evenly. So just take a moment to scan your physical body. Is my spine long and open? Is my head balanced on the top of my spine and my shoulders hanging deliciously off my frame? Am I feeling the weight of my body surrender to the ground, so to speak, the buoyancy? Eyelids can smooth out, face can smooth and drop and relax. Now we're going to even out the pattern of our breathing such that there are 4 counts for each of the 4 stages. So 4 counts as we will breathe in together, 4 counts as we keep that breath in, then 4 counts to release the breath out, and then 4 counts as we remain empty before we breathe in again. So with me, starting breathing in, 2, 3, 4, stay right there. 2, full of air, 3, 4, releasing out, 2, 3, 4, staying empty, 2, 3, starting over again. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, stay there, 2, 3, 4, breathing back out, 2, 3, 4, empty again, 2, and start over on your own pace. Keep the cycle going throughout this whole meditation so you can maintain that even flow of breath, about 4 counts per spot, per stage. If you can, breathe through your nostrils and keep your mouth closed. If you are following us in the future, reviewing this class, feel free to pause the video, as I say, and let this settle in for a few minutes. If you're with us, we're going to open up now a wisdom gateway that is in our breath, and it is the space between the end of the in-breath and the beginning of the out-breath. That sort of empty space between those 2 points, that is our wisdom gateway. And as you flow through the cycle of breathing, allow that to open. Just sort of remain in that wisdom gateway as you flow through the rest of the breath cycle. Very good. At this point, notice the state of your mind and your heart. It should be even more tranquil, like that surface of a beautiful still lake. Now, we're going to place in our wisdom gateway this divine concept we've been looking at. Just as water reflects a face, so does my heart reflect love from the Ein Sof, the love that the Ein Sof is showing me every moment, now and back throughout all of history. Just as water reflects a face, if I were to gaze into this clear surface of a body of water, I'd see my own face smiling lovingly. That's how our heart responds as it hears this mashal and understands the details of the love that the Ein Sof, not just the greatest person we can imagine, but so far beyond that, showers on us, paying close personal attention with kisses and hugs and unity. Let that divine concept fill your mind. Don't be concerned whatsoever if the mind drifts. Just let the concept fill in that part of the mind that drifted. In fact, sometimes the mind drifting is the way of finding a piece of your mind that's not been filled yet. And now you can be thankful to that distraction, because now the concept can flow even more into the recesses of your being. And as we sit, breathing through this divine concept, notice any emotions that are being inspired. That is the love being reflected from this infinite source at the core of my own soul. This kind of meditation is very, very useful to remain for some time, because we are creating an emotional lens through which to see the world, an emotional power through which to elevate the world. So if you have time, feel free again to pause your device and remain here for 5, 10, 20 minutes. And you'll find that you have emotions that are accessible, heart-centered, other-centered, divine, soul-centered emotions that are accessible throughout the day to be the best person you can in every relationship, every interaction, every opportunity. But if you're with us, we are done with time. So please open your eyes, wiggle your toes and fingers. We're all back together in our separate spaces. Oh, Noreen is here just in time to say have a good class. Welcome, Noreen. Sorry, we missed you in this class. And hi, Woody again. Woody's definitely getting into the meditation, it looks like. Thanks everybody who joined us on Facebook. Again, if you'd like to be part of our class on Zoom or even in person when we're able, please email Maya at temple-israel.org and she will send you the links so you can join our class. Please email with any questions. It's been a pleasure having you, and I wish you an amazing, amazing week.